Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I am Joey Calvo. Before we get started with today's podcast, please continue to help the victims of the California wildfires. They do need our assistance in rebuilding. So anything can do. Gift cards, furniture, clothing, whatever you can help with, please help them best possible. Today, as we continue this wild, how can we say this? Wild booking of guests and lots of podcasts to come. I have the very beautiful Silvia Subirana. She is a clinical psychologist and head of content development at Unconscious Moderation, which is an app that helps people rethink their relationship with alcohol using tools like hypnotherapy, journaling, and self-reflection. Silvia, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, okay. We're excited to have you as well. So tell us about who is Silvia?
So, well, as you said, I'm a clinical psychologist. So I've studied a lot about mental health. And also I stopped drinking around 6-7 years ago. I don't really have a date because it was very organic for me. But I stopped drinking a while ago because it didn't my stomach would just not cope well with alcohol. So I just listened to my body after a lot of years of just drinking because everybody was doing so and it was very, very normalized. I was like, this is not working for me. So I challenged that and I stopped drinking and I haven't looked back. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Okay.
So that's what I right now I help people go through that same path that I went some years ago, and I help them understand all the benefits of not drinking or reducing the alcohol intake. And yeah, that's what I do. That's my passion.
Okay. And congratulations on that accomplishment.
Thank you.
Actually, before I go on, in reference to me, I'm not like, usually I'm not like a alcoholic. I'm like what they call a social drinker.
Mm-hmm.
So, but because of my health, well, before we got to where my health is at now, I mean, I would go to parties in high school, and, drink all the wild alcohol and, like the Jim Beams and all those Jack Daniels and all that fun, heavy stuff. But as I got older, it kind of just went cold turkey. So, and then with my health, it got to the point where the only alcohol that's safe for me is white Zinfandel wine. And I don't even drink that every day. I mean, I drink it when I go to the casinos. But so tell us about, so how did Unconscious Moderation get started?
So it got started because, as a team, there were some ideas where we realized that alcohol is everywhere, right? I'm not the founder, but I've been there since pretty much the beginning. And yeah, we were surprised because alcohol is everywhere and it's very, very socially acceptable. Like, for example, if you do any other type of drug or substance like that, because it's illegal, it doesn't have that component of the fact that everybody assumes that you are gonna take that, right? But with alcohol, if you don't drink, you're the weird one.
Yeah.
If you don't get drunk quite frequently, especially in social gatherings, you're the one that's doing things differently, and people are going to look at you.
Yeah, I'm going to have a story about that afterwards. So please continue.
Yeah, so that's why, like, we were talking, and we were like, how is this even possible? Because alcohol can be so bad for everyone's bodies, right? So we wanted to give a different tool out there because there are many tools that help people quit or moderate. But we realized that the reason why a lot of people drink, well, there's many reasons why, but there are one big reason why is because they don't know how to break with that cycle, right? Like, for example, a very, very typical thing. When people are stressed, they drink. And that is because of a pattern that they have in their unconscious mind. So we wanted to work with that and target those patterns so people would actually be able to break the cycle and make better choices for themselves. And again, for me, the choice was to not drink at all because my system doesn't respond well. But maybe for another person, moderating and drinking from time to time, like, I don't know, drinking once a week or once a month, depending on the person, will work. And that is completely fine. In the end, we want to give the people the tools so they can make better choices for themselves.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned about, how in social gatherings, I can bring this up because this actually happened. I actually went to what they call now an all-year reunion, which is like different high school graduate years. Mm-hmm. And we all met at this place. And I was like, I'm going to have my wine because, I'm comfortable. And that's, I was going to have a glass or maybe two. Well, no, I was not allowed to have one glass of wine at all. I was controlled, quote unquote. I felt controlled for most of the night because when I wanted wine, I was like, oh, no. You are not having wine. You're having this. No, you're going to have this. You're going to have this. And they were buying these drinks. And I wound up not being happy because I was like, I wanted to have wine. If I had my wine, I would be fine. I wouldn't, it wouldn't, be all off the wall and, I would have been comfortable. But no, they were like, no, and this is how they stated, or the feeling I got off of it. You drink white Zinfandel wine like a sissy, enough to like, it was like, it actually hurt me. And these were people I went to school with that I was like friends with, and I was like, I can understand, back in high school, like I was mentioning before, drinking the Jack Daniels and the vodka and, partying hard. But like now I'm in my 50s and, my health is not the greatest. And, white Zinfandel kind of like calms me down, it's more of a more comfortable thing, and like, like I said, the only time I really drink it now is like when I go to the casinos and I go to the casinos minimum once a month. So, it's not like I drink, every day, but I did have a former neighbor. Oh my God. And maybe you can relate to this, Silvia, in reference to it. I used to have a roommate, quote unquote, who was an alcoholic. I mean, he was bringing home beers every single night and almost kept me up all night because, everything he was doing, loud music, everything. So he wound up moving out a couple of months ago, so it's been peaceful. Mm-hmm. But have you ever related to that, to where, where like you have gotten off, that, and then dealing with people nearby, that are close to you, quote unquote, that are still like, they make you feel like you're tempted to want to drink?
Yeah, definitely. Like maybe not. Like I've never had a roommate like you did, like that situation, but I've been to many social gatherings where everyone was like pushing me to drink, as you said before, like, why are you not drinking? Come on, just have one or have two. You're gonna have fun. And I'm like, I am having fun if you just let me be. If I have whatever I want to have, then I am gonna have fun because that's what I want to choose, right? So it's happened to me many times, and obviously, like, I think it's around like 7 years when I started doing like getting in these sort of situations, and people just push you. People don't listen to what you actually want.
Yep.
And especially drunk people, they just think, I am drinking, I am having fun, then everyone needs to drink, and the more you drink the better. But again, maybe I don't want to drink, and that is completely fine. And one thing that I work with, the people that I work with, a lot of people say that, like, I just feel forced, and people keep pushing me, and it can be very, very uncomfortable. And that's one of the reasons why some people just keep drinking. It's because they don't wanna face that. They don't want to be completely put on the spot on, like, what do I decide now? Because I feel like I'm being the center of attention. Everybody's looking at me, and I don't want to be the weird one that doesn't drink, right? And a lot of people tell me this, and it can be very, very daunting. And for example, in my case, when I stopped drinking and these things happened, I remember when I started drinking, I would always drive to any social gathering that I would go. So then I could say, no, I'm actually driving. I cannot drink, because not only because I don't want to, but also because I'm driving. So for me, it was a very good excuse. So people would leave me alone. And when you say that you're driving, at least in my surroundings, everyone was very respectful. Like, oh, okay, then I'm not going to force you, because obviously you are not going to drink and drive. Right. And actually, that was the best excuse for me. And then after a while, everyone that I normally hang out with got used to me not drinking, and then everyone just stopped asking. But it still happens to me 6 or 7 years after I decided to stop drinking, when I go out with new people, or when I go out with like friends from my friends and stuff like that, that everyone asks me, why are you not drinking? So it can be quite inquisitive, quite uncomfortable to have these conversations, because maybe it's a health issue, maybe it's because, I don't know, some people are trying to conceive and have babies, or maybe it's just because they don't feel like it and they don't want to, and they don't need to give explanations to anybody. So yeah, I that's what I always tell the people that I help, that I work with, to think of a reason why, a sentence that they can say that is short and very direct, as if, for example, no, I'm driving, or no, I'm just not in the mood, or no, my stomach hurts, or I'm not in the great mood to drink, or stuff like that, that is very direct and very firm, so they can actually use it over and over, and they are happy with like setting that boundary.
Okay, so explain about the app itself.
So the app Unconscious Moderation is a 90-day program where people can choose if they want to quit completely drinking alcohol, or if they want to learn how to moderate. But the first 30 days is they're dry for everyone. So we encourage everyone to not drink during the first 30 days. And then on day 30, they can choose if they want to pursue the dry path or the moderation path. And they will look a little bit different, because in the moderation path, we give extra tools so people understand the reason behind the urge to drink, right? Like, why do you want to drink in this certain moment? And we help people also keep track of the drinks that they're having, and more things. And basically, during these 90 days, you have tasks every day for 30 minutes. And those 30 minutes consist of 15 minutes of working with the unconscious mind and 15 minutes of working with the conscious mind. The way that we work with the unconscious mind is hypnotherapy. And then with the conscious mind, we work through journaling, reading, and then a little bit of movement. Okay. So when I say that to people, a lot of people say, okay, what is hypnotherapy? Because I think hypnosis in general has quite a bad reputation because of movies in the theater. But it is very safe. And I always tell people that you are never going to lose that awareness. You're never going to completely be knocked out and do something that you don't want to do, because we don't have that mind control. So basically, the hypnotherapy that we provide is a 15-minute audio that you just put your headphones on and sit down, close your eyes and listen to it as if it was any sort of meditation or relaxation audio, which a lot of people have done or have tried before. So it will bring you to that deep state of relaxation, the same as any meditation or relaxation. But the difference is that when you're in that deep state of relaxation, where all your worries have dialed down, then you're more open to suggestion. So our hypnotherapy sessions bring you to those suggestions and open your mind, right? So as talking about an example I said before, when a lot of people are stressed and then they drink and it's automatic. So what hypnotherapy does is broadening up the mind. So the person understands that, okay, yes, when they're stressed, they can drink, but there are many options out there. So instead of it being automatic, like it was until now, maybe you understand that you can, I don't know, call a friend, or you can go for a walk, or you can bake a cake, or you can do anything that you enjoy doing. So instead of it being automatic, you feel like you have options, like the world is broader, like you can actually choose, right? Because a lot of people say, yeah, but when I'm stressed, alcohol just chooses me. And I'm like, no, this is very, very automatic in your brain. And breaking that cause effect is very, very difficult only with willpower. But that is why hypnotherapy is very effective, because it actually targets that. And then with the journaling that we do, we help people realize the automatic things that they do and the way that they make decisions. So they're put in different situations where they have to choose, and then they can realize what are their patterns, where the patterns are, so they can actually target them and say, okay, is this actually working for me? This might have worked for me when I was a child, or when I was a teenager, or when I was a young adult, but is it working for me right now? Maybe yes, maybe not. So if you feel like that is not working for you, then you can actually actively change it. But in order to be able to change it, you have to understand it and identify it, right? So basically what we do is help people understand how they work and how their body is reacting to the different things that happen in their lives, so they can learn more about themselves and consequently make choices that are more aligned with their values and how they want to live life.
Okay. All right. So practically what this app is saying in what it's doing is with the hypnotherapy and the journaling and the self-reflection is it's kind of rewiring your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it practically in reference to it. Now, you mentioned how you were because it says here also you were struggling with anxiety and gut issues during your time. Could you express that a little bit more, like what you really went through during that time? I mean, I you explained that how it led to you being where you're at now, but how did you really deal with everything? Like what in reference to medical effects, that you really had to face while you're going through all this?
So what happened to me is that I studied bachelor's degree in psychology, and that was fine. But then when I started doing the master's degree, I obviously that is quite well, you have to work a lot, you have to do so many things. It's a master's degree, so there's a lot of pressure. And instead of listening to what my body was saying, I would just push and push and push. And in the end, I had anxiety for a while during the time that I was studying. And because I was doing poor choices, like, for example, socially drinking on the weekends, especially when I would go out with my friends, everything just added up, So I didn't have gut issues only because of my drinking or because of the chocolate that I used to eat, because yes, when I was anxious, probably I ate more chocolate than I should have, or because of solely my anxiety. It was everything that just added up. And then in the end, it ended up with me having a gut infection. So I actually had to stop and reevaluate my habits and how I was living life, because I was living life in like as if it like automatically in survival mode, and I was not questioning my habits. I was not questioning my daily life. I was not questioning everything. I was just going and doing it. And I didn't set aside any time for me to reflect about how I was and to listen to what my body was telling me. Because when I think about the years before arriving to that, like getting that gut infection, I realized that my body was talking to me. I was just not listening because I had been bloated for a very long time. Like I would be very, very inflamed, but I would be like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm just getting inflamed. That's it, you know? And I would not pay attention to that. But if you don't pay attention to your body will find a way to scream louder and louder and louder until you actually take care of it, right? And in my way, it was when I felt like I couldn't eat without me bloating completely and feeling very, very sick. And I lost 8 kilograms. I don't know the conversion to pounds. That's quite a lot. Taking into account I'm 5'2", 8 kilograms is quite a lot because I'm a very short person. So in a very short period of time, like I lost all that in like a month and a half. So that was very drastic for me. And when I realized that something was not right, I was like, okay, this is like my body is screaming right now. And I went to the doctor and I felt like I had left it for too late. I was like, I have this massive gut infection right now. But if I had gone to the doctor 6 months before, or 6 months ago, or 1 year before, it probably would have been so much easier to address instead of me, like, I don't know, spending a year to recover, right? So obviously the first thing that I stopped doing when I started feeling very inflamed and all that was to drink alcohol. And then obviously the doctor also said, don't drink alcohol while you're like recovering and getting your gut healthier. But then once I did all the recovery, finished the diet, all the supplements and antibiotics that I had to take and everything that took probably a year and a half, I went back to eating everything. Like I went back to eating gluten, to eating lactose, to eating everything that I was eating before, and everything would sit well in my stomach. But when it came to alcohol, when I remember going out with some friends and drinking, and I would be like, this just doesn't feel well. It makes me feel like when I had the gut infection. And then I was like, okay, I need to actually take care of myself and listen to what my body is saying. And my body right now is saying that this is not well for me, that this is not sitting well. So instead of forcing something that doesn't work like I used to do, I'm going to listen to my body and change that. Right. That's why I always say that it was very organic, because it was not a day when I just stopped doing it. It was just after, like, during a period of time where I was like testing it, and I would be like, okay, how is my body reacting to this and that? And then in the end, I was like, my body is completely healthy, completely fine. But every time I drink a little bit of alcohol, I just feel completely sick and I want to go home. So I'm just going to stop testing it and living, like, I'm going to start living life without alcohol. And I feel like I have learned a lot about myself as well. Like I had to redefine what having fun meant for me, because I feel like there's this idea, like social idea, that to have fun in special, like in certain settings, you need to be drunk or you need to drink alcohol. And that is completely wrong. Like that is so not true. I realized that I could be in any social settings with my friends, and because I was not drunk, I would have more fun because I would be selecting what I wanted to do instead of just doing something because everybody else was doing it. And sorry, go on.
No, I was saying, so you were feeling like I was feeling back then, the society, the pressure of society and the peer pressure and everything. to do that. Before I had you continue on real quickly, two little curious things, I'll say. You mentioned chocolate. So, like, when you're eating chocolate, what was the favorite? What was the go-to chocolate that you went to?
I like pretty much any chocolate, to be honest. I am very I have a very sweet tooth, so I would go to anything, any chocolate chip cookies or any chocolate bars. The thing is, I'm from Spain, so I don't really know the brands that you have in the US and that we have here.
Yeah.
I love obviously chocolate can get very expensive if you just keep eating the highest one. So I would go to like the supermarket and eat normal chocolate, because that is like, that fulfills me and like my sweet tooth. But I quite eat a lot of, or used to eat a lot of Lind.
We have that here in the US. We have the Lind chocolate.
Yeah. I for a while I loved the one that is like darker chocolate, but not completely dark. I think it's like 70% with salt on it, because I like contrast of flavors. But to be honest, I ate quite a lot of anything, and that's something that I also tried to cut out. No, I haven't cut it out, because I still eat chocolate. I love it, and it's something that I feel like in moderation, my body accepts it, and it doesn't upset my stomach, so that's good. But I think I've reduced a lot the consumption that I like compared to what I used to eat, because it was not healthy. What I was eating was not healthy. I would have like very healthy meals, but then I would snack a lot in between, and I've tried to reduce that snacking, because that's where everything went wrong.
Yeah. So like you would wind up having like those midnight cravings for chocolate, I was like that too. But it was not all but my version here in the United States, we have, M&M's, Snickers, Reese's, it's actually practically two companies. There's M&M Mars, and there's Hershey's. Hershey's is not actually far away from me here in Pennsylvania, where I live. So it's like maybe about 2-3 hours away. So that's where the Hershey factory is actually at. But in reference to, like chocolate and stuff now, it's like I still have that sweet tooth, but I branched off of that in reference to it. I mean, if I want chocolate, I'll go for the Kit Kats and the Reese's. The Kit Kats have the chocolate outside, but they have like crunchy wafers inside.
Yeah, we have Kit Kats and Reese's here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then Reese's, of course, the Reese's peanut butter, especially around the holidays, the Reese's eggs, the trees, all those others. So that was kind of one thing. Now, in reference to drink of choice, when you were out with your friends and you were in that dilemma, we'll call it, what was the drink that you went to the most?
Before or after I started drinking?
Well, before, during, and after.
So before, I would say that I loved mojitos. So I believe that what used to sit the best, I wouldn't, obviously everything sits bad, but what used to sit the best, or not the worst, in my stomach was rum. So I used to drink cocktails that had rum in it, because I felt like I liked the taste, and I felt like it sat better in my stomach. So that was my go-to. And then I like, for example, beer and stuff like that, but that gets me inflamed so easily. So I just got it out of the picture. And wine also has a very, very upsetting effect in my stomach. So wine was out of the picture as well.
Okay.
So I think the drinks that I was having on my last days when I was drinking was they had rum in it.
Okay.
And then when I stopped drinking, I think that's a very good point. When I stopped drinking around like 6-7 years ago, it was not big to stop drinking. Like if you went to a bar and you didn't have, I don't know, a beer, wine, or a cocktail, it was either a soda, a juice, or water. Like you didn't have any other options, at least in Spain and in other countries in Europe where I would visit for, I don't know, a weekend and stuff like that. It was not an option. Right now, that has changed so much. I've seen a drastic change. There are so many mocktails out there, so many options, kombucha, like many, many different things that I believe that really helped this movement of sober curiosity and for people to reduce drinking in general, because something that I felt a bit guilty, or people made me feel a bit guilty about, was like, I don't know if that's something that you see in the States, but if you want to cheer with your drinks in Spain, it's considered unlucky if you do it with water. You have to have alcohol or like a drink, a fancy drink, you know. So everyone would be like, oh no, we're not cheering with you because you have water, and that is unlucky. So I was very, very confident in my course because I knew that it was for the good of my health. Like I needed to do this. But I always thought, what if I was a very insecure person about this? What if I was a person that would be like trying to do a change, like make a change, and everyone would be forcing or like reinforcing, oh, you're not included in this cheer because what you're doing is going to give us bad luck. I know it's just a silly superstition, but these things in someone that it might not have that confidence or might be a bit more in the fence might push that person to drink because it's the easier option. I am going to be included. Nobody's going to make me feel like I am the weird one, right? So
like it's also like being so, like I said, the peer pressure, you know, feeling the peer pressure and you know.
Exactly. But right now there's so many mocktails that you can actually cheer and feel included because everyone can have fancy drinks on the table, and some might have alcohol and some might not. So I feel like it's a very interesting time to reduce the alcohol intake, because even if you want to do it but not telling anybody around you, you can do it because you just ask for a mocktail, like a version of our cocktail, and nobody needs to know that you're not getting drunk, you know.
Well, I mean, there's one drink here in the States that people like me would be picked on if I had it now, even though I haven't had it in a long time. Shirley Temples.
I don't know what that is.
It's I actually forget because it's been, like I said, it's been so long. But instead of alcohol, they use like not a liqueur, but like grenadine syrup.
Okay, yeah.
And like I think it's soda and grenadine, but it looks like an actual drink when you have it. But it's not alcoholic. So, and then also now here in the States, we have non-alcoholic beers. And you were mentioning about the mocktails. But like I said, in reference with me, like my go-to. Now, I asked you before, like, you know, I mentioned about what I asked you, what your go-to was. I'm going to share my go-to. Okay, only because, you know, I got to be fair and transparent. And at the same time, yes, folks, if you're going to bitch about me taking over the podcast, I'm sorry. You know, it's supposed to be about the guests, but I like to share my information with the guests as well because it's therapeutic to me. Okay, so if you're going to bitch in the comments about it, bitch away, but I'm going to delete you. So back then, in my high school years, I was drinking the Budweisers and so on. And when I went to the high school parties, like I was saying, Jack Daniels, I was into Bacardi rum, or into Jägermeister, which was like really, ooh, wow. I mean, I was taking it. But one thing that I learned when I was at the age when I could legally drink, okay, I actually went from one bar to another. I was bar hopping one night, and yes, I was driving, but I was a careful driver back then. So I stayed within the speed limit. I tried did everything possible not to back then. And I learned my lesson really after this. I was driving up this one-way street in my hometown, and I was like not even 5 minutes away from the place I was going to. And I literally watched this car go off the road onto a property and slam right into the front porch of a house, right in front of me. And the craziest thing about where this happened was it actually wound up being someone I knew later on. Thank God, they were fine, but I mean, they slammed into the front porch.
That's so scary.
Yeah, it was. It was a very scary experience, and I learned to the point. I was like, I will never do that again. So, or if I did, I was being even more careful. But I've also learned. I have gone through worse, but it wasn't. Thank God. I actually thank God that nothing happened. But this might be something that you may come across one day. If they weren't drinking, I actually fell asleep behind the wheel, and I was on a highway, and I was managing to stay awake the best possible, and a police officer stopped me. Thank God it wasn't any worse than that. So I pulled over, and he was like, you're falling asleep behind the wheel. I was like, yeah, because I was going to work, because I worked an overnight job. So I was on the way from a friend's house to work. And when I got to work, I usually rested up. But I was starting to fall asleep beforehand. Thank God, nothing really happened off of it. But did you ever have, like, I know this is a little off of what we're talking about, but did you ever have one of those feelings, like one of those little incidents, like where you're out with your friends, you're having a great time, and you get in your car and like you're feeling tired as you're driving?
Thank God that has never been the case for me, because I was, every time that I got into the car and I was driving, I would be very, very conscious of what I was doing. And so previously I would never have alcohol, because that was not an option for me.
Right.
And I would also be very aware that it was not only my life, but also my friends' lives that I had under my responsibility, because they were in the car. So thankfully I've never been into any of these scary situations. But unfortunately they're quite common. Like you hear the news, and they're more common than I would like. Thankfully, like, the ideal would be that obviously there were none of these situations, because that would be the best. But of course, like, they still happen, unfortunately. So I always was very, very conscious that I never wanted to be the one that created any sort of incident because of that. And thankfully that has never happened, at least not yet, and I hope never.
Well, like I said, I thought I'd share it with you, being something that you could share with your clients and stuff, or even, I mean, you literally have my permission to use it, as in reference to therapy and stuff. because like I said, I learned a lot from it. And like I said, like if I drink now, I mean, it's like not, well, I can't say even social, because most of the time I do have the White Zinfandel. Is like I'm by myself most of the time when I do it. But I've also learned with if I drink so much, and I don't know if this was a feeling you had back then. Even I was getting depressed. I was more of the depressed drinker. Like I would drink so much, and all of a sudden I would be like bawling, like really literally like apologizing to people for everything I've done. Like even though I'm doing that now and I'm not drinking. But did you ever have those feelings like, where
Yeah.
you were drunk and like, oh my God, what did I do? Why am I doing this? And like apologizing to your friends for like everything that even like that you did when you were 6 or 7 years old, or stuff like that. You like so much got bottled up and you were like letting it all out.
Yeah, so that happens to a lot of people. Like that, I feel like that has happened to me, or that used to happen to me. Probably not every night, but from time to time, I used to have that as well. And that it is because alcohol is a depressant, so it suppresses all the emotions that you might have right now. Like for example, that stress that I was talking about before. So you're not gonna feel that stress, but it just lowers your inhibitions. So maybe it makes you feel more connected with some things that have been bottled up, and they just come to the surface, right? And it depends on the situation that you're in and the moment that you drink, and it depends on so many things. But it definitely messes up with your emotions, because it messes up with all your body, messes up with your hormones, and with the normal or balanced structure of your brain and your body. So yeah, that is backed up by science. It's very, very common, and also that happens very, very frequently. Is during a hangover, people normally have a lot of anxiety because, as I said, alcohol is a depressant, so it makes your body sort of relax when you take it. But then when you break that balance that the body has, and you go to one extreme, which is completely be completely relaxed, then the body needs to overcompensate and goes to the other side, because when you are forcing the body to relax with substance, the body is overworking to activate itself, so it would jump onto the other side once the effect wears off, and it needs some hours to regain that balance from before you started drinking.
Okay. I do have one more question. I mean, and I'm going to explain very quickly. What I'm about to ask may make her feel uncomfortable, and I'm going to apologize in advance for it, because you know how we talked of the one of the the part of your life with the gut issues and how it was a depressed. Like I said, what I'm going to ask, and I'm going to understand if you don't want to answer the question, because I have a tendency of going one end to the other of the spectrum. So we, how we talked about, like I said, about the gut end of the spectrum and the health issues. What was the worst thing that has happened? And again, like I said, I'll understand if you don't feel comfortable answering it. But what has been the worst part that you had to face when drunk, or even now when you're not having alcohol, when you're having the mocktails, when you're with your friends? Has there been a worse experience like that you have dealt with, that you may wind up sharing in therapies, or that you could use in the therapies?
I'm trying to think of any, but thankfully haven't had any experiences that come to mind at the moment. I've always been like with friends and in quite safe situations, and maybe if I was not in safe situations, thank God nothing bad happened. So I feel like I can say that I've been quite lucky in that aspect, because I know that there are many, many dangers out there. But I like when like in social gatherings, either drunk or not drunk, I don't feel like I've ever been or I've never felt in danger. Maybe I was in danger, like objectively, but because never ended up like nothing ended up happening, then I don't feel like I have any experience that would be good to share, really.
Okay. And I apologize again for asking that, because, like, like I said, I try to go and, to really go through the spectrum in reference to it. So, I do apologize in reference to it.
No worries.
But, I don't, there are times I've made guests feel uncomfortable with even the quote unquote weirdest, craziest, off the wall questions. So that's why I stated in front of it before I asked it, if you didn't feel comfortable answering, I understood. I thank God that you didn't have to deal with, going through being in a bar and like almost get into a bar fight. Or I'm not saying that I did it, but I'm just saying, these games.
Yeah, these things happen. So you never know.
That's why I asked, that's why I was asking more about in reference to something like that, where, being and folks, I'm not being sexist or anything, but most of the times in the bars, how women get hit on, and how some of them are so drunk, they kind of force themselves on you, and so I'm not, like I said, that's why I asked something like that, because like she said, it's a normal thing that happens. Well, not maybe normal, but it happens, especially in bars and social gatherings and stuff. So that's why, like I said, if you got uncomfortable with that question, I apologize in advance about it. So what is next for Silvia? What's Silvia's future with the therapy and the app, and where is this going?
Well, so hopefully we'll keep I'll keep sharing new ideas, and we'll keep developing more things in the app, because I think that it has been reaching a lot of people, and they've been learning either to quit or to moderate, and it's had a very positive impact. And to be honest, feeling like for myself, feeling like I'm part of something that this is important, like helping people learn how to have better habits, and feeling like they are also getting the results, is something very is very fulfilling, to actually have that impact in the world. Even if it's, I don't know, when I remember when the team were like, even if we can help one person, that will have been a success already, because that is huge, right? And just to keep seeing that we help people every single day, and to see that impact that we made, the positive impact, from now on, I only want to continue feeling that and pursuing that with I don't know, we were brainstorming about maybe doing other things, because at the moment the program is only for alcohol, but obviously there's many other habits that can be targeted with that. And for example, hypnotherapy has been very, very useful in the past. Like, it's been proven to be very useful for quitting tobacco, like to quit smoking. But it has been proven to be effective for many different things, and maybe we can make the program broader, and not only target alcohol use, but also, I don't know, like gaming or gambling, or drugs or any other behavior that can be a bit difficult to learn how to moderate or completely quit. So, but again, that's just some brainstorming that we've done with the team. There's nothing that has been we haven't started creating.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that it would be very, very good to get out there, because yes, there are many tools available that are very effective, but I feel like the more tools the better, because one tool might work for me and another tool might not work for me, but then the tool that didn't work for me might work for you, right? So because everyone is different,
right,
I feel like the more tools that are out there, people can actually try different things and try different paths so they can create lasting change in themselves. And being part of that is a very important thing for me right now.
Yeah. So how can people look into wanting to use the app or, be involved in this type of therapy?
So they can go to App Store or Google Play and they type unconscious moderation and they will find the app. And if they want to learn a bit more about the program, about the people who's behind it and everything, they can check our website, which is um.app, so um.app.
Okay.
And everything is explained there. All the questions that people might have, they're normally explained in there. And if anybody has any further questions, there's a contact form that we'll be happy to respond to. And you can also check out our Instagram, which is unconscious, like app also. And we post stuff that we do and updates from time to time. So but I think the most important one to visit is the website, because there you have all the links to all the others.
Okay. All right. So you can go onto the Apple or Play Store and search unconscious moderation, or go to um.app. Silvia, you're welcome to come back on here anytime if anything new populates.
Thank you.
And again, I'm saying it to everybody, I am apologizing again if I make her feel uncomfortable on some things. Like I said, I try to broaden, or in actual, and I'm not saying this podcast has been interesting, but I try to make it more innovative, more informational. So I apologize if if anything made you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, no worries.
And because, like I said, you always hear one end, but you never. Like I said, I always try to look at both ends and to share both ends. Because, like you said, if it helps one person, I always say, prove it to me. Prove to me that if I'm really making a difference, I want to know. So the same thing with Silvia. If she's making a difference for you through the app, let her know, because she's an amazing person, and she had to deal with me for almost an hour, and I and as we were talking, and me being, keeping the focus on her, and I'm throwing my information in, and I'm feeling bad because I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So, and I'm not even, just to let you folks know what my quote unquote alcohol right now is, it's iced coffee. Okay. So, but, as we've been talking, I'm like feeling bad. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like really am I making her feel uncomfortable with that question, trying to figure out, how, the limits to push, but I do thank Silvia for coming on, truly. And the invitation, like I said, is open. If you feel comfortable coming back on, because I'm going to close with this, and you being a clinical psychologist, probably have had this even through in your therapy with those with, that had the alcohol addiction that they're fighting. I had a guest on this podcast, and I thought everything went well. And what happened was someone came on the live stream and actually asked, well, kind of was saying things. And by the end of the podcast, the guest freaked out because they were realizing this person was kind of like stalking them. So that was kind of like what I get worried about now when I do these podcasts. And like I said, when I asked that question, I was like kind of feeling the same way. I was like, not the stalking part, but the uncomfortableness. Mm-hmm. And I had to wind up deleting that whole podcast on their request because they weren't comfortable wanting to be on after that. And they literally got to the point where they blocked me on social media. And I felt like I really didn't do anything, but I was taking the responsibility. Mm-hmm. So like I said, that's one thing I've learned is, taking the responsibility. It, like, if a guest feels uncomfortable, I feel honored for them telling me, then realizing later on when they want nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. Or, so that's why, like I said, I'm apologizing at the same time as I'm being grateful that she came on the podcast to explain her story, because, everybody has a story. And so, and because of my anxiety and depression, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, people that really care, I'm literally pushing them away because I'm like, you really don't want to deal with me. I mean, if this is something that might interest you in expanding, here you go. Here's proof, and, mm-hmm. And again, I'm apologizing for even bringing it out, but, I'd rather be transparent. I'd rather say, hey, this is who you're talking to. This is, who you're getting to know. Mm-hmm. And if this helps you in like the expanding and the brainstorming, please, feel free on it. And hopefully, would love to have you back on if something like this came up.
Yeah, so, definitely. Yeah. I will let you know if we come up with something different, more targeted to like anxiety and depression. Definitely.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Silvia, for coming on and sharing your story. And definitely, actually, I just got a comment. Don't be sorry. Tell them to get. Oh my God. Don't be sorry. And I'm apologizing to Silvia for even showing this. But this is what somebody just said. Don't be sorry. Tell them to get fucked. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This is literally what I'm talking about. Because this is not something I do possibly. I try to keep everything in a positive mood, even when I'm in my own worst mood of depression, where, like I said, I'm pushing everybody away. Those that, really want to help me, I literally just push them away because I feel nothing can help me. So I apologize for that comment, and I did ban that person for what they just said. So I apologize to you, Silvia, in reference to it. But I also thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for dealing with me for the hour. And like I said, the invitation is open if you feel comfortable coming back on. Okay. And I thank you, everybody, for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast on YouTube. And may God bless you all.